Can you fit a building like this in New York City? Coming up on Architecture CodeX.
Architecture CodeX. If you want to see more, like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe.
According to the song, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. Artists, broadcasters, fashion designers, performers, musicians, architects, bankers, financiers, and more flock to New York City every year with their dreams, and New York City barely notices. So most New Yorkers were probably not aware when a world-famous architect built his first New York City skyscraper. 8 Spruce Street, once known as the Beekman Tower, in the financial district of Manhattan. In a world where architects are not famous, Frank Gehry broke through with his iconoclastic personal idiom, mostly consisting of undulating sheets of titanium or stainless steel. For a while, if a person could name 2 architects, the name in addition to Frank Lloyd Wright was Frank Gehry. Unless you were drinking insurer, in which case the second name was I Am Pei. After a successful but average career, Gehry reinvented himself and burst onto the scene with buildings such as the Guggenheim in Bilbao, Architecture Codex video number 11, and the Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles. So it was natural that a New York City developer would want to offer the Gehry style, his brand if you will, to the New York City real estate market. The problem is that his style was horizontal, hogging the land, and land is much too valuable in New York City. It was the same problem we saw for Zaha Hadid at 520 West 28th Street in Architecture Codex video number 23, another star-architect whose defining architectural brand is antithetical to urban economics. For Gehry, the brand, as noted, is undulating, sculptural, windowless, unpeeling buildings. Given that most of them were predominantly museums or concert halls, the lack of windows made sense. But when you are designing for human beings living in a building, human beings need windows. The resulting design is really a redressed New York City skyscraper where the facade on 3 sides appears to billow like fabric in the wind, as if the building was draped with canvas, sort of like Frank Gehry and Bulgarian artist Christo were holding hands. My first read was that the tower had Art Deco-like design elements and proportions that were being pushed into a freeze-frame captured energy, the way that Renaissance architecture went from stilled beauty into more dynamic Baroque art. This might be an indication that Gehry and I speak the same architectural language. Indeed, later I read that Gehry compared the 8 Spruce Street design with the folds of fabric on a Bernini sculpture, Bernini perhaps being the premier Baroque architect and sculptor. And this captured kinetic twist on a Rockefeller Center type building is simultaneously Gehry and New York City, which in my opinion means this is a very successful and beautiful design. At first, the development was conceived as a joint venture between New York Presbyterian Hospital, the owner of the land, with their facility directly east, and Pace University across the street directly north. Both institutions were to have over-street bridges to connect them to the new building. It appears that Pace was excited to get a Gehry building, but pulled out when the Gehry design began to drive costs much higher than standard New York City construction. My inside source at Pace said it was more than 3 times standard construction cost. Eventually, the building became dedicated to an independent school with almost 900 apartments above. It broke ground in 2006 and opened in 2011, and at 76 stories, it was the tallest residential building in the Western Hemisphere when it opened, but that lasted about 15 minutes. What I find particularly interesting are what might be called the non-Gehry parts. It's almost as if people recognize there's only so much Frank Gehry anyone can take or afford. For example, There are some 10,500 stainless steel panels that make up the 4 facades. On 3 of the facades, the panels undulate, and so each panel is unique. On the 4th facade, the south facade, the panels are flat, and therefore 2,000 of them are identical. According to Gehry, this was the design intent, but I wonder if it wasn't in fact an economy measure. The first 6 floors of the building act as a base for the tower, but it appears to be a completely different building. A relatively normal terracotta brick box with windows properly proportioned for a New York City Soho industrial building turned loft. This is where the school is located. Was this a design decision because the nature of the building changed above this level? Was it as simple as the lower floors needed a different plan because they were not residential? Or was it designed in a different way because the undulating stainless steel panels of Gehry are just too delicate for the New York City streets? Or was it an economy measure? Gehry on the streets was not a problem a few years earlier when they completed the IAC Building in the West Village. Here, at the owner's insistence, the relatively low-rise 10-story building was sheathed in glass, not titanium, as Gehry wanted. And the glass hits the street without compromising the Gehry rippling. Perhaps glass is less of an invitation to graffiti artists than titanium or stainless steel. But perhaps since it is unbounded on one side on the west and relatively free of the normal boxy New York City streetscape, it could be Gehry from top to bottom. At Spruce Street, the building is set off by a plaza on the west and otherwise bounded by the streets. And if you did not look up, you might not notice the Gehry Tower set above the brick base. I find such constructs curious and amusing, and part of the give and take that is the building process in the real world. So while I am intrigued by the bipolar nature of the building, I consider it logical, given the program and the economics. And I have no problem considering the brick box as a suitable stand on which to place a Frank Gehry sculpture. But some critics are aghast that the demigod of Frank Gehry had to deal with the mediocrity that is the school below. If you cannot design and do not need to build in the real world, it is very easy to become a zealot about architectural purity. I had a classmate who went on to become a professor, never practicing as an architect, tell me that by definition, if I got anything built, it was because I had prostituted my architectural design skill. I said, well, if I'm a whore, at least I'm not a cheap whore. I'm Michael Molinelli, and this is Architecture Codex.